Tilting this way on this.
The Topeka governing body meeting will come to order. Please rise if you are able and give your attention to Councilmember Hiller for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I want to introduce to you the Right Reverend Kathleen Chittenden Bascom. She was ordained and consecrated as the 10th Bishop of the Episcopal Diocese of Kansas on March 2nd, 2019. In a service marked with history, she became the first woman bishop in the diocese's 160-year history, and as the 1,112th bishop of the Episcopal Church, she was also the first diocesan bishop ever to be selected from a slate of candidates who all were women. She was in Iowa for 17 years before coming to Kansas and served prior to that at the start of her career for 8 years in campus ministry at Kansas State University in Manhattan. The Episcopal Diocese of Kansas has more than 10,000 baptized members in 44 congregations. It covers the eastern 40% of the state of Kansas, extending as far west as Abilene and Wichita. Also includes the cities of Topeka, Lawrence, and Manhattan, as well as the entire Kansas City metro area on the Kansas side. Diocesan offices are part of the historic Bethany Place, which covers 2 city blocks on Southwest 8th Street, close to us, between Polk and Western. Bethany Place was founded in 1860 with grants and direction to create an Episcopal female seminary there, which duly developed. That site also now hosts Grace Cathedral. Bishop Bascom today, in addition to her pastoral and management duties, is exploring the development, modeled on a partnership with the Agatha Amani House in Kenya, of developing a restorative place for the human spirit on the Bethany Place grounds through recreation of traditional gardens of consumable foods, as well as restoration of native prairie grasses and prairie flowers. Welcome, Right Reverend Kathleen Bascom.
Your Honor, council members, and good people. As a very new citizen, it is an honor to be with you this night. Am I on?
Yeah.
You're on.
Creator of all, behold and hold in your grace the city of Topeka, all of its resources and its citizens. Renew tonight the ties of mutual regard which form our civic life. Guide the honest and able leaders gathered here. Empower their efforts to revivify Topeka's urban core and to eliminate poverty, prejudice, and oppression. Work with and through them that peace may increase in our homes, schools, businesses, and streets. May the men and women and children of Topeka, with their many backgrounds and cultures and talents, forge one with another fulfillment of our humanity. We seek your wisdom. Amen. Amen. And I think also of your agenda, one last, Eternal One, we remember also this evening those who suffer want and anxiety from lack of work or shelter. Guide our council members to use our land, civic policies, and public wealth to wisely cultivate employment opportunities, just payment, and safe and suitable housing for all our citizens. We ask in gratitude. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have the Human Relations Commission, Larry Roberts, Edith Gaines, and Chris Omni. Join me up front, please.
Today we are here to present the Troy Scroggins Award to these 3 recipients. The Human Relations Commission uses the Troy Scroggins Award to recognize individuals and organizations for their efforts in furthering the HRC's mission, which is to ensure fair and equal rights to all citizens of Topeka.
Hello everybody, I am Luis Estrada, the Chair of the Human Relations Commission for the City of Topeka. Along with me are the Commissioners for the Human Relations, and here is my co-chair.
Hello everyone, I am Cynthia Happ. I'm the Vice President of the Human Relations Commission.
I am Lorraine Williams, one of our commissioners.
Ursula Goodman, one of our commissioners.
William Nager, another commissioner.
Kim Montoya, Human Relations Commissioner.
It is my honor today to present these awards to 3 very deserving recipients of our community. A lot of their work has been recognized by their peers and by the community for all the efforts and everything that they do to just better the community around us and help us have the opportunity to get involved as well. The first recipient, Larry Robbins. We want to really take a moment to honor you today for your outstanding individual, for your fearless service, for advocating to equal opportunity for staff development in minority groups in Topeka School District. You've done a lot when it comes to enabling our students to recognize the opportunities that they have in the school system. And I will have my co-chair speak more about it since she's a fellow teacher here in the district.
So I've known LR for 5 years, and in those 5 years, he has been a wonderful influence on Minority Leadership Academy. He inspires me to be a better leader. He helps other minorities develop their skills, and he's always advocating for all of our staff at USD 501, and it is my honor to give you this award. Yes.
I'd just like to take a minute to express my gratitude for this recognition. It's an award that is certainly well thought of, an award that I consider it a privilege and an honor to receive this evening. The work that we do is work that hopefully everyone attempts to engage in, and that is providing opportunities for those who are deserving and maybe haven't had the chance to take advantage of let's say opportunities that were given to others. So working alongside with Ms. Hopp and other colleagues through our Minority Leadership Academy has certainly been just as rewarding and fulfilling to me as it has been rewarding to them. So I stand here with considering this the greatest honor that I've received. So thank you very much.
So the next award goes to a recently very good friend of mine. I ran into Chris Omni at a Nardi party a couple of years back, and aside from sharing a birthday, we both share the passion of involving our communities and our cultures to be more aware about what their health entails and how it commits to our futures, making sure that we recognize that health is the strongest driver for us to get where we want to get. So with that note, I'd like to present Chris Omni with the Troy Scroggins Award.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
So y'all know better than to give me a mic. But I will keep it short and sweet and say thank you. Just like you, I come from a place of gratitude in receiving this, especially living in a community where less than 10% of the population is Black. And when you think about Black women, which is my focus, half of that. So we live in a society where a lot of times the images that we see do not adequately reflect who we are. But by you representing or you giving this award, you are saying that you see the value in Black women's health. You see that there's potential in what we're doing, because no matter what it is our goals are, you cannot achieve that without your health. So unapologetically focusing on Black women's health and receiving this award means that you stand with me and stand with us. Thank you.
And the third award, and I just want to clarify, usually we do one award, but after we spoke as a commission and we realized that the submissions for these individuals were very much warranted, I said, you know, why don't we just go ahead and give them all three the award? and that's why we're here today presenting these three awards. And lastly, but not least, Miss Edith Gaines. And I will have my Commissioner Laureen Williams or Kim Montoya award her.
All right. All right. Well, thank you. It is our pleasure, Edith Gaines, to give you this award on behalf of our commission. Topeka Human Relations Commission honors outstanding individuals with their efforts in Topeka, being a leader in promoting health equality and educating our community on race relations, the impacts on health, and there's just so many other things that you have done. I know this evening Ms. Gaines asked if she could share a pamphlet with the City Council, and she did. So if you have some time, please read that brochure. It's both in English and Spanish, but that gives you just a glimpse of what she does in our community. So on behalf of the Human Relations Commission, we'd like to honor you with the Troy Scroggins Award.
Well, I don't know how many of you know that Shawnee County ranks, I believe it's 67 out of 102 counties that were assessed in the county health rankings for 2019. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to live in a community that's considered unhealthy. Everyone wants to live a long, healthy, productive life. And so my work is with the Racial Equity Impact Analysis Group, where we are at the health department looking internally at our policies and procedures, our strategic plan to make for sure that we are providing culturally competent services to the community so that all of Shawnee County can be healthy. And so it is just an honor to be here today receiving this award.
Having three recipients means our community is doing a lot of work, and we really appreciate it. And thank you for your service. Yeah.
That wouldn't surprise me, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, we have a presentation for Public Works Quarterly Report. City Manager.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Tonight, City Engineer Brian Faust will run through a update for the third quarter for Public Works projects and provide you information and then be available for questions at the end. Brian?
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor and Council, for the opportunity this evening to highlight many of the projects and activities occurring within the Public Works Department. There are a significant number of capital improvement projects and maintenance activities across the city in 2019. And what we have before you is a partial list of what was accomplished in 2019. And I want to thank staff for all their hard work and the governing body and the residents for their patience during a very active construction season. The projects do cover the 4 components of our pavement management plan, from pavement preservation, major rehabilitation, reconstruction, and stopgap measures. There were 2 projects on here that were very recently completed that were stopgap measures, and those were critical to occur this year before reconstruction occurs later in the future. These included Southwest 29th between Arrowhead and Wanamaker, and Southwest Gauge between Inland and 6th Street. And these were needed to address safety and rideability concerns, as well as continual maintenance demands. We also show 2 projects on here as wintering. And basically with those, we've pretty much shut those projects down for the winter. There's a lot of work left to do, and with the weather and the temperatures that are forecast for the winter, we thought it best to limit what the contractor can do and start back up in the spring of 2020. The recently completed projects that fall under the complete reconstruction banner. The picture on the left is Arvonia reconstruction, which is Arvonia and Winding Road. And the one on the left is Southeast Adams from 33rd to 37th. Both of these projects are complete reconstruction and a continuation of projects that started in 2018. And I did mention stopgap measures. The picture on the left is actually of Southwest 29th between Arrowhead and Wanamaker. This view is looking towards Wanamaker, so looking west. Actually, what we had here was a pavement joint happened to be in the wheel path, both east and west bound. And so what cars were doing, they're actually straddling the center turn lane to avoid pretty much a rut that ran the full length of the project. So what we did, we were able to mill about a 4-foot wide swath, full length of the project, 3 inches deep, and we filled that with asphalt. It makes it much more rideable going into winter. The picture on the right is actually Chesney Park, and that would fall under our major rehabilitation category. This is the first year of the project. We'll finish it in 2020. Involved mill and overlay, curb replacement, and some storm and water line work. Public Works was also very involved in Gage Park, as well as the zoo in 2019. The picture on the left shows the construction associated with Kay's Garden. It's underway. And the picture on the right is actually a large retention pond that was constructed in the park. This pond captures water from the surrounding areas. And the time it's being retained, sediments drop out, so the water that's released is a great improvement in water quality. We do have a number of projects that are in design or final design for the upcoming years. The first one I want to highlight is Southwest 10th Street. That is between Fairlawn and Wanamaker. If you've been out there recently, you've actually seen some utilities relocating. Westar's been relocating. We actually start the water line project, scheduled to start December 19th. So that week, starting December 16th and on, we'll start replacing the water line along the length of the project. We'll bid the project early in 2020, and it'll be a 2-year construction project, finished in 2021. It'll go from a 2-lane rural section to a 3-lane urban section with a shared use path on the north side, sidewalk on the south side. It will look very similar to 10th Street that we did Gage to Fairlawn a couple years back. We're also working on the design of Southwest 12th between Gage and Kansas. We did hold a public informational meeting on the 21st at the library that was very well attended. This is our first project that uses the Complete Streets design guidelines. As far as internal services, they have been very busy with a wide variety of projects this year. Everything from a renovation of Fire Station 13, and that's the flyer for the open house that they had on November 19th. They also completed a detailed mapping of all items within the right-of-way, including current pavement conditions. I continue with repairs and maintenance across all of our city buildings. And they also went live with our AVL system on a number of city vehicles, including public works equipment, which includes the spreaders and the plows for the upcoming winter season. Our street division continued with a mill and overlay program you see on the lower left, an alley rework on the right, street sweeping, potholes, very busy. And they're also very able to quickly mobilize in the last couple of weeks to overlay Southwest Gauge. We had a contractor come in and do localized milling, but actually our street operations crews were able to mobilize and actually overlay that section of roadway. So, with that, I'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
Any questions? Councilmember Lesser?
Can you explain to me what field check means in regards to the status?
During the design of a project, we have that initial conceptual design. Then we go to field check, which is probably 65 to 70% complete. Then we go to office check and final design. So it's a step within that process. And I also want to say field check, we actually review the plans in-house. We actually then go out into the field and walk that with the consultant to see what if anything was missed.
On the 12th Street project, what is the, tell me about the utilities. What utilities would we need to move for that project? Are there utilities under the street?
Correct. Just from the city's perspective, we have both water, sanitary, and storm under the street. There'll be Kansas Gas, there'll be, I guess it's Evergy, KCP&L and Westar merger. A lot of utilities associated with the project. Significant water line work associated with the project. Our utilities department went through and evaluated break history and age of the water lines. We have actually water lines under the road that were put in the late 1800s. And so as part of the project, we're going to be replacing all those water lines. Last thing we want is what happened on 10th Street, do a brand new street and have the water main start to blow out right away. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Comments? Thank you very much. Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes. Deputy Mayor Clear?
Here.
Council members Hiller?
Here.
Ortiz?
Here.
Emerson?
Here.
Padilla?
Here.
Jensen?
Present.
Dobler?
Here.
Cohen?
Here.
And Lester.
Here.
Okay, I understand there's a change to the agenda. Who do I call on? City manager?
Oh.
Lisa?
There was a request today to pull the 421 Southwest Huntoon Street disposal of real property and have that considered as a separate item. So if you could, that's the intent. So we go ahead and as part of the consent agenda, approve the minutes and the applications, and then we will consider a discussion on disposal of real property after that.
I was listening to the dog. What did you say?
I was trying to do my best.
I was like, totally not concentrating.
You know, when the pastor talks over the crying baby, I was trying to do that.
Okay, so we're pulling it and
So we pull
doing it
it from the
later?
consent part, approve the
And put it-
minutes
okay.
and applications as part of consent, and then we'll address the other item.
All right, is there any
Councilman Emerson has some comments.
comment, objection? Okay, then we will pull that. There are no appointments this evening. We are ready for the consent agenda. Will the clerk please read?
Yes. A, will consider separately. B, our minutes of the regular meeting of November 19, 2019. And there's a list of cereal malt beverage and dance hall license applications. Staff is requesting approval.
Any comments?
Motion to approve.
Second? Have a second? Who said that? Cohen. Okay, Mr. Cohen seconds. All in favor? Vote yes. Still on the dog.
Okay, we have 9 yes.
Okay, 9 yes, the consent agenda passes. All right, will the clerk please read the item authorizing the sale of real property located at 421 Southwest Huntoon Street?
A is approval of the disposal of real property located at 421 Southwest Huntoon Street.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a brief discussion with Councilman Emerson prior to the meeting, and he brought forward an idea that as a contractor, he would recognize that we may have a need for storage of materials when we begin to do the 12th Street project, or the possibility of locating the shop trailer or office trailer along that location, and that we may have a need for this property during that project. I need to spend some time with staff to determine if they've made other thoughts or arrangements related to that. And since it was right before the meeting, we didn't have that opportunity. So would look to just have this deferred, and I'll confer with staff, and then we'll bring back a recommendation as to whether to hold off on disposal of this property or to ask you to go ahead and move forward and explain what we've arranged for related to that issue. I appreciate the recommendation.
Councilmember Hiller?
Can we just have the city manager remove it? And that way it can come back whenever. Can you just pull it?
That's what we're doing.
Okay. All right,
You know,
I'll just pull it.
Rather
Sorry.
than for.
Sometimes I'm not used to
pull
that
it.
procedure.
That's all right.
At the meeting.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Well, I just pulled it unilaterally.
Oh, you just pull it. Okay, pulled.
We don't have bad luck, sir.
Okay, we'll now proceed to the action items, beginning with action item 3A, the public hearing if the clerk would read.
A is a public hearing regarding the establishment of the Dynamic Core Redevelopment District.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Tonight, we continue the hearing as part of our discussion related to the Dynamic Core Redevelopment District. There have been a few developments that have occurred, and so I'll turn it over to Deputy City Manager Doug Gerber, who's been handling this project. Doug?
Governing body, good evening. As per normal, I'm here to visit with you about an economic development project, specifically the Dynamic Core TIF District. As you know, a couple months ago, we opened the public hearing, or excuse me, about a month ago, we opened the public hearing and recessed it to this date. Tonight, we are once again requesting that you open the public hearing, take comment, and then recess it to next week. That's per the request of our partners at the Greater Topeka Partnership, who are in the audience and can answer any specific questions you might have. As the city manager alluded to, there have been some developments since the last time we spoke. Specifically, myself and Curtis Sneathen and Vince Fry have met with a number of members of the school board and Larry Robbins, and we worked through understanding of the TIF process, what it might mean to them, how it might impact them, came up with what we thought was some good compromise language for them. And at their last school board meeting, the school board actually voted affirmatively to support the project. So that is where that stands with them. So we're pleased with that, and we're certainly pleased that they were willing to work with us to get through this process. So again, tonight we would request that you open the public hearing and then recess it to a date certain of December 10th.
You know, I want to say I'm really proud our city did that. There are a lot of cities that would not have spent the time or the energy to talk to people that had a concern with the TIF. They would have just did it. So I'm really proud that we did that. Are there any questions, Council, prior to proceeding with the public hearing? Councilmember Groom?
Whether it's proceeding or in the hearing, I just wanted to mention that, again, along the lines of opportunities for people to have input or have their concern, just learn more about it and raise questions if they have them. We've got a meeting scheduled for December 5th with the businesses in the whole riverfront area and some others that came out of the last hearing we had when I invited the people that had come to speak, that if they wanted to have their own hearing, I would help arrange that. We didn't hurry on that because of the issue with the school board. And so it's now set for the 5th. There may be a report or none, but we're expecting at this point over 30 people at that. So we'll let you know how that went. And if anybody wants to come, you're welcome as well. It's from 10:30 to noon at Lardner Stone on Thursday, the 5th of December.
Okay, we will now open the public hearing on the Dynamic Core Redevelopment District. And when I pulled up and all the parking lots were full, I thought everyone was here to talk about that. I'm like a little panicked. So do we have anyone that wants to speak? Do I have to ask this 3 times? Do we have anyone that wants to speak in the public hearing on the Dynamic Core Redevelopment District? 3rd time. Does anybody want to speak?
Just have to be a dynamic speaker.
It doesn't matter. Okay, so I know there's a desire now to put this on December 10th.
No,
No, we don't want to, because we're going to recess it until.
So do I have a motion? Councilmember Jensen? Who said second? And Neil Dobler, Councilmember Dobler. Any further discussion? All those in favor say yes. All those opposed say no.
We have 9 yes.
Hearing none, having voted yes, the public hearing is moved to December 10th. Okay, will the clerk please read item 3B, an ordinance regarding camping?
B is an ordinance introduced by Councilmember Sylvia Ortiz, creating a new Article 3 of Chapter 9.45 of the Topeka Municipal Code concerning camping.
Before I call on Councilmember Ortiz, I belong to this committee for the first year, and I want to tell you, they have done due diligence. They have gone from here to here. Very comprehensive. I think they did an excellent job. So Councilmember Ortiz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Trying to have a little story to tell over here, if you'll just hold on just a second. The camping ordinance meetings began June 15th. In 2018, council members Sylvia Ortiz, Sandra Clear, and Mike Padilla started it out. 9 meetings between June 2018 through November 2019 regarding camping ordinances. In 2019, committee members Sylvia Ortiz, Karen Hiller, and Aaron Mays were back on the committee until Mr. Mays flew the coop. And then Councilmember Hiller said we need to have a third person. So then we got Councilmember Padilla back on the team. So it was herself, Karen, Padilla, and myself, and Councilmember Padilla said, let's wrap this thing up. Well, I was here when we started, and I'm going to be here when we finish. So I want to thank him for pushing me on that. On a serious note, though, I have been through a lot of committee meetings, a lot, hell of a lot. And this has probably been the most unique one that I've ever been on, and I'll tell you why. I started out and I said, we're going to take our time, and as you can see, we did. And then we didn't rush it. We got testimony from individuals that came forward, the homeless individuals that shared their testimony. We had Sergeant Joshua Clam, raise your hand back there, that was committed to this, to the homeless, and he presented the city-issued photo IDs. I don't think it's been done, but a few other places, I think, or has it been done? I know it's really, really new. That has helped our homeless population get jobs. That has helped our homeless population get some of the benefits that they're deserving of, whether it be Social Security or food or whatever benefits. And today it still stands strong. So I'd like to thank him personally for caring and for doing that and for continuously out there talking to them, letting them know that, you know, trying to figure out how we can help them from becoming homeless. I'd also like to thank, I don't know if she's here, Corey Wright, Division Director of Housing Services, who pushed forward alongside of Sasha Hahn, Director, who pushed forward to get them into housing, to try to free up that money, to try to free up as much money as they could on our end, the Shelter Plus program. I'd also like to thank the Homeless Task Force and their representatives. And if you're here today, if you'll please stand, because I do see some of you in our mix. Grace Med was a big, Stormont Vale, Dr. Russell Burton, and we'd like to say thank you. There were so many entities that came forward to see how we can help these individuals, and that's what it's all about. A special thank you to Dr. Russell Burton. Dr. Russell Burton, can you please stand? This man worked tirelessly at breaking me down to make me understand the individuals and what they were going through. And he worked tirelessly at bringing them to our meetings to testify. And continuously, he takes them from here to there. He doesn't get paid, but we want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, Dr. Burton. And today, me and Dr. Burton are friends. I would consider us friends. Okay, you can sit down. I'll just read some of the Vallejo, Topeka Rescue Mission, Community Action, Second Chance Services, Doorstep, and many other local organizations that step forward. To Luther and to our city attorney, Lisa, we want to say thank you because we pounded their heads a little bit as well. And they worked until they heard Mr. Padilla say, put this on the table, let's get this out of here. So we want to say thank you. So it's been, I just want to say, there's so many people that were brought to the table, and I promised them this was not going to be the end. But this ordinance was brought forward because we had campers all over the place. We had, business owners that were upset. We've got campers, homeless campers in places where they're unsafe. And so it was just a little bit of everything that we kind of pulled together. And this is the last of the ordinance that we think would be fitting to fit everybody's needs. I know there's somebody out there that I forgot. Charge it to my head and not my heart, because this has been a very unique experience and a very gratifying experience. There's only one thing that I was contacted today that I want to ask Luther about, if I may, or Lisa. And I know in one of these meetings we talked about adding the word trails, and I don't remember why we didn't. I know that came up, if one of you guys could tell us. Because there was some concern that there's campers on the trails and that,
That's correct, council member. In Luther and I's discussions, it's very important when we crafted the ordinance to make sure that it allowed for places where folks could camp. And from what I learned from Luther and the TPD was that there wasn't that big of a problem with folks on the trails, and to the extent that there was, they can always call somebody at the TPD. They can come down, and usually what happens is that they'll talk to the individual and kind of find out what's going on, and they can get them to move from that location. Luther may be able to elaborate better, but that's my understanding of why the trails weren't included. You have to, it can't be a total ban, you have to allow some places for folks to camp.
Okay. Well, in saying all that, I spoke with several people with Shawnee County, and they were concerned that this isn't in there, and they felt that it needed to be in there. And these are the people that are on the trails, that take care of the trails, that travel the trails. So what I would like to do is I would like to make an amendment in lines 41 and 42. So it reads, public infrastructure means bus, shelters, trails, and bridges, and just insert that, if I may.
Councilmember Ortiz, I think part of the reason why trails was omitted too was due to the fact that we didn't want to get anywhere close to, of course it's not a total ban, but we don't want to get up against the edges of having a constitutional argument, and that's why we left that to the devices of the folks who, if they see somebody there, they'll contact the Parks Department or TPD. We can certainly make that change, but I would just caution that it makes our jobs a little bit harder if there's some kind of challenge that's made. We can talk about that.
You mean a legal challenge?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'll hold that there. I'll make that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, open for discussion, I guess.
Okay. Councilmember Lesser, seconded. Councilmember Jensen.
Thank you, Your Honor. Question, do we even have the authority to do that on trails? I thought those were part of Shawnee County Parks and Rec and not City of Topeka property. My understanding is we don't have the authority to do things on county property, but I could be wrong on that.
Councilmember Jensen, in parks themselves, they have a closing time. You can only be there during certain designated times, and then the parks close. And the Parks Department folks and TPD have the authority to ask people to leave. But the trails themselves can be considered part of the, I guess, the sidewalks that go within the city. The only, I guess, restriction that we have in this currently proposed ordinance is that you cannot camp in front of a business and obstruct the path. There has to be a pathway through, but you cannot camp 10 feet in front of any doorway, fire escape. What's the other one I'm missing?
Loading dock.
Yes, yes. So that's what we have in the ordinance as it stands today with respect to sidewalks.
Well, so
Not
there's a difference
trails.
between a sidewalk and a trail. A sidewalk is generally on the right-of-way, which is technically public or private property. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, but what about something like the Shunga Trail, where that's not easement? Is that a trail or a park?
It's not a park.
And I know I'm splitting hairs, but, I mean, what are these things exactly?
I think what you're asking is part of the difficulty and part of the reason why we didn't include it is we've got a number of different trails. We've got trails along the river, we've got trails along Shunga Creek, other ones that I can't think of right off the top of my head, but by and large, the camping issues that we've had in the city have not been concerning our trails. People that are camping around in those locations are not on the trail itself. They're off to the side of it, maybe in some brush or some trees or something like that. If we have a complaint, and I think the thought has been is that if we have a complaint or an issue with an individual maybe scaring or threatening somebody, that we could deal with that with police officers on an individual basis with our existing laws.
Sure.
Part of the difficulty we were trying to navigate with this ordinance was tying it back to a government purpose. What is it we're trying to accomplish?
Sure.
And we lay that out that we're trying to protect certain sensitive areas in our infrastructure. And we don't really have a problem that not a significant problem that we've heard of with damage being caused to those trail systems. On the other hand, we have had a lot of complaints with people next to businesses, under bridges, and things like that. So that's the reason why one is included and one's not.
Well, and I understand that, but who owns these trails? I mean, aren't they part of Shawnee County Parks and Rec, or you know, one of those the 10-foot wide sidewalk things?
Yeah, I think it's.
I mean, do some of these fall under Parks and Rec, where it indeed closes in the evenings? I guess we haven't well-defined trail and exactly what it is and exactly which governmental entity is responsible for it.
I believe.
Right.
I think a lot of them are probably owned by the county. When you have other lesser developed trails, some of them along the river may be owned by the state.
Okay.
Councilmember Lesser?
The ordinance spells it out. It says public property means public parks and all property that is owned, managed, or maintained by the city, including, then that's where that comes in. So, I mean, it spells out which property. It says public parks, that are owned, managed, or maintained by the city.
So what is your question, Councilman Jensen? So do you want to know what trails are, or do you have a question?
Well, that was it. What are trails?
Okay.
And that's still not answered, but that's fine. I'm not that worried about it.
Councilmember Jensen, I think that's part of kind of the quandary that we're in, and I think Luther mentioned that when he came up. It's like, what is a trail? I mean, what are trails? There are a wide variety of them. It could be the Shunga Trail, you know, it could be some kind of dirt trail that's, I mean, how do we get so specific in our definition of trail that we cover what it is that you desire, but leave open those areas that...
So what I understand is, this isn't an issue right now, the camping on trails.
From my understanding, that there isn't a huge issue, Councilmember Clear, with the trails at this point in time. And if there are folks that are camping, the TPD's been contacted and they've addressed the situation.
So if it became an issue, could we then revisit the ordinance and?
Try to identify it, yes.
Okay, any other questions? Councilmember Emerson?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Right now, are there people camping in these areas right now that this will displace?
From everything I've seen, and I've been out a number of times myself, and not too many. There's actually very few that this will displace. Two of the areas that we drew the box for downtown in Noto were drawn rather carefully in order to not include the riverfront area, because there are a significant number of campers in that area. That's a kind of a mix of ownership on whether it's public or privately owned. So we drew that to exclude that so we wouldn't be displacing very many people at all. My guess is the people that might be displaced are those that are underneath bridges. And that's, as you're aware of, that's probably one of our more urgent needs.
Let me ask you.
Yes.
I guess my reason for that question is, right now, we don't have a problem on the trails, but if we are displacing people, are they going to go to the trails?
I don't think we can answer that. I mean, it's a question.
One last question then. Could the county do this separately? Could they pass an ordinance that would prohibit this on their county-owned, maintained trails?
Sure, they could do essentially what we're doing by resolution, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Hiller?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Try to pick up a couple of these answers. The definition in here of public infrastructure doesn't limit it to being the city's public infrastructure. So we do already have the term public infrastructure with a definition in here. I thought I recall, we asked about this a couple times this in 2019 when I was on the committee. I thought one of the things I recall, we decided when we finished this ordinance that if it was already covered by a law someplace else, it didn't need to be in this one as well, duplicated or possibly in conflict. If we already have an ordinance that says you're not supposed to sleep on the streets and the sidewalks, or otherwise get yourself situated there, we're probably covered anyway. For those who recall, it's kind of I know we asked about the trails, and one of the answers was, for the most part, nobody's sleeping on the trails. Nobody's setting up their tent on the trail. They're setting it up near the trail. If all you said was trails, that wouldn't be covered. Similar to when we talked about the nudity ordinance, not to bring up another deep subject, you know, there was a need to define whether it was within a sight line or 10 or 15 feet or something like that, that just naming the trail wouldn't do it. So I'm thinking that for that one, if the county wants to look at it, maybe they can look at our definitions, and it would, if we can go in either with something new whenever we have it, or in 6 months if we have to wait, that might be enough time for them to really do the legal research on that issue. I do recall that they said it wasn't much of a problem. In answer to Councilman Emerson's question, I asked that very question at our last meeting, and Officer Clam is in the back. The answer, and there were nods from Dr. Burton and the homeless folks who were there, was that they didn't think that more than 5 people would be displaced by this change. And one of the things, I've had some people emailing and calling about this. One of the things that Dr. Burton particularly is an advocate long ago, when this started 15 months ago, said, please don't drag this on forever. We want to know where it's at. And at this point, people from the homeless community, as well as the advocates, close-in advocates, have been involved all the way along in establishing this. And there was pretty much consensus this was probably about as good as it was going to get when that last meeting occurred. Perhaps there are only 5 people because everybody's been kind of working along on this and knows what's going to turn out and what's probably not, and has got themselves situated in the right place anyway. I guess I wanted to share that with you, but also for me, we've brought it in for a landing. People were ready for closure so that they know what the rules are, it's done, and people can move on. And I really do think Councilwoman Ortiz has done a fabulous job, and the staff and everybody who testified, and that we're as ready with this as we're ever going to be.
Okay, we have some people signed up to speak. Let's hear from them, and then we'll all come back to this. Okay, so we have Russell Burton. Please state your name and keep your comments to 4 minutes.
Russell Burton is my name. Where to start? I'm somewhat bothered about the trails issue. I mean, there are some people that camp on the trails. They will be displaced if you were to put that in the ordinance. That would be a bigger problem, and I agree with Councilperson Hiller here that I was talking to a hillbilly today down on the river, and he says, well, things are going good. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, I know I'm not going to get evicted now, and he says, I've been worried for, 17 months or whatever it is about being evicted. So, I mean, the ordinance is, the way it's currently crafted is a very good compromise. And this is politics and it is the art of compromise. I appreciate that. I am not a politician. I'm a social scientist and I'm a social worker. And so I have a group of people that I'm obligated to advocate for. And I can tell you that even though it's maybe 5 or 10 people, it's probably a couple of handfuls of people. Those people are some of the sickest and the most damaged people in our community. They are some of the most vulnerable people in our community. And they will get woken up at 3 in the morning with snow on the ground and possibly being barefoot and have to walk through that snow to hike out of downtown or to hike out of Nodo. I mean, is that really the answer for these folks, is to chase them around town? Because they'll go under another bridge. These are folks that can't even maintain a camp. They can't maintain any type of space, really. They just nomad wander, and then they sleep wherever they happen to find themselves. This will just start a chasing of folks around the community. But again, it is a small handful of people. I appreciate that it's a compromise. I appreciate that it's not near as draconian as what you guys had originally, what the subcommittee had originally proposed, and I appreciate that. What I would like to talk to you guys about very briefly is that this is not really what our homeless community needs. What our homeless community needs is a warming shelter, a cooling shelter. They need a diversion system in the justice system where they can do things besides have to pay fines, which they can't possibly accumulate. And they need housing first, which is what you guys, the city, through Corey's Wright's office and so forth, has provided. We housed 35 people about 10 months ago. Today, 30 of those people remain housed. That's an 86% retention rate. That is way better than, and the Vallejo does a great job at what they do, but it's better than Vallejo, and it's better than the Mission, and I don't even know what their retention rates are. But I know that when you compare housing first to other traditional models, you run into retention rates that are 80%, 85% versus 30, 40, 25%. Housing first is very efficient and very effective. It works, it's very cheap. $1,700, $1,800 to house somebody for the year, as opposed to how much did you pay for that bridge? Right? I mean, that's just a cheaper alternative. There's all sorts of research in this that I've shared with you that talks about how effective Housing First is, how much money it will save your community. Housing First saves communities millions of dollars over time. I mean, Housing First will save you guys probably in the neighborhood of $20,000 to $30,000 per person that's on the street, and you've got by head count 50 people on the street, but I can tell you that there's 200, so you do the math. You do the math, as opposed to about $1,700, $1,800 to take care of a person for a year through Shelter Plus Care, through Housing First. That is the most effective, the most wisest decision that this community can make about how to house people. You want the folks off the streets, provide them housing. They want housing. They'll take it and they'll stay in those houses, and we've demonstrated that over 10 months. You guys ran a pilot program you didn't know you were running, and you demonstrated that it made sense. It works. Congratulations. I brought some folks here that were beneficiaries of the housing program last year, and they've come to talk about how it's changed their lives.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you. Michelle Reeves.
Hi, my name is Michelle Reeves, and I am one of the first recipients of the first group of homes that the Homes First program did provide. It has changed my life. I went from being homeless to losing my kids. They were all displaced with family members and everything else too. I'm this close to getting my daughter back now. Back from ABC Care, I am able to know that I have a secure place. I have a warm bed. I have a place that I can call home. I can make my appointments. I can stay focused. I'm not sick anymore. I've been able to go to treatment and maintain treatment and have a better, healthier life. And if it wasn't for this program, I would still be out there on the streets, and I don't know if I'd ever get my kids back. So this program has provided me with a tremendous opportunity that I didn't have before. And it's been able to change my life, or I'm possibly thinking of going back to school and finishing up to get my BSN. And if it wasn't for this program and having this home and having the program, they go through and they help you with connections with Vallejo so you can get mental health services, there's disability applications or food, he's had people that are trying to do everything they can to not just give us a home, but once we're in the home, to maintain that home, because that's what we need. Because, being homeless is really, really hard out there, especially with the wintertime coming up. Being outside homeless is really, really hard. And so this program has just given me the opportunity to get my life back and to get my family back, which before that was not even an option for me. So I just want to thank you and thank Dr. Burton for this program because it saved my life.
You keep up the good work.
Thank you.
I couldn't quite read this. I'm going to guess at this. Pamela Burkhart? I couldn't read the last name.
Hello again. I'm Pamela Burkhart. I have been housed almost a year now, and it has done a lot for me. I'd be dead right now if I didn't get into housing. I was dying. I had pneumonia twice. My health is bad. I've got Medicaid now. I'm waiting and pending on my SSI, my disability. And I love my home. And there's, I'm in another committee, as in the Housing First, and we really need to get some kind of grant, something, if there's anything that we can do, because we need to get some kind of grants from places to, I don't know how they do it, but there's so many people come up to me, they got children, Pam, what can I do, what can I do? I cry because I don't know what to tell them. Okay. The grants are closed, for Shelter Plus Care. But then you got HUD, you got Section 8, and now I'm finding out there's more. So I'm getting involved, and I'm getting involved in the community now because I want to spread it. I want to bring in the homeless because it helps. It helps to get a place. I have a home, and it was so weird at the beginning. It took a lot to get used to. It did. But I'm getting my drawings back now. I'm getting myself back. My kids talk to me. My mother talks to me. And I thank y'all. Thank you. But just keep on, please. Housing First is really great. It's really, really, really great. I don't do drugs. I smoke cigarettes, but very, very, very few now because I got my health. But my goodness, if I was in the streets, I'd be dead. And I'm not ready to die. And I know way too many. Thank you.
We're glad you're still with us.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to butcher this name. Mikkel Inlow? Bob Cutter.
Hi, thanks. I kind of came into this a little day late and a dollar short. Spent all night butchering an old version of the ordinance. And so anyway, I'll just keep it short and brief. I really think that with the Supreme Court, the 9th District court decision that's coming up, it wouldn't hurt to just wait a few months on this and see what the Supreme Court decision comes down and says. It's not going to cost the city anything to just wait, see what that says, and then go forward with this to see what sort of constitutional issues there might be with this. I was really concerned with it, the first readings and the first versions I saw with this. I'm not sure that I've even seen the final version of this, which I'm not sure actually lays out the districts, does it? The areas that this covers? It does?
Limited.
Okay. All right. So the last version I did see did put off a lot of my fears about it. So I'm still pretty much against it. I think we already have a lot of the laws and ordinances in places that deal with a lot of the concerns. I don't think the city is really hurting for new laws to deal with a lot of this stuff. And I run a Facebook group with over 40,000 people in it that deals with a lot of the city's concerns about crime and policing and stuff. So I see a lot of what the city's concerns about homeless and the police's reaction to it. And I see what a lot of the citizens' concerns about basically hatred towards homeless people is. And one thing I worry is that this ordinance might be seen as kind of a validation towards a lot of people's animosity and hatred towards homeless people if it's not worded and put into effect in a very sensitive manner, if that makes any sense. That's really about all I have to say is I'm against it. But anyway, thanks for hearing me out. That's about it.
Thank you. Hey, council, any more discussion? Councilmember Jensen.
So my question is, if we approve it tonight, when does it actually take effect?
After we publish it, how many, do you know how long that is?
On Monday, so we're going to put that on Tuesday, so December.
Can we pass it tonight and delay its effectiveness until after the Supreme Court makes their ruling?
That's a motion. The Supreme Court,
Well, or just say delay it pass it tonight, but implement, or delay its implementation until, say, the summer?
Well, what is the ruling and why would it affect us and how would it affect us?
Good question.
Well, I would say, Councilmember Jensen, that Luther's been deep into this for a year and a half, and he's gone through all the court cases and is pretty familiar with it. And if you'll recall, when it first started, he did a very elaborate PowerPoint presentation and talked about what's called the Pottinger Principles and followed each of those. And I think having followed those, we're in really good shape. And I think we're comfortable with how it's written right now, that we would be okay with standing a legal challenge at this point.
And if I may, my other reason for asking that is we're going into the coldest part of the year, and it's orders of magnitude harder to move at the height of winter than, say, it is the summer. So part of my thinking is, well, if we implement it now, but delay its actual effect until it's not as hard for some of these folks to move, then perhaps at least they'll know what's going on and have the ability to plan, but we won't force them to work through that at the height of winter. Just some thoughts.
That is something that could be done if the council makes a motion to make the effective date on a date certain that's several months out. Otherwise, it will go into effect the Tuesday after publication.
Well, my comment is it's 60 degrees outside, and it's going to be that way for a while. I think we want this done. I think the homeless people want this done. I think we want this done. I think the committee's been working on this. I mean, there's 5 people he said maybe that might be, and he said they move around anyway. So I'm not sure it would have an effect. Councilmember Everson?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I guess a question, is there anything right now, unless we pass this, is there anything that prevents people from camping under the bridges right now? So that could we could potentially have another $1 million accident if we let this over winter time when people are going to be starting fires and stuff potentially. So that'd be my concern with not enacting it.
Councilmember Ortiz?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The homeless have been following this. They come to our meetings and they've been following this, and they pull us aside and tell us what they like and what they don't like. So they know that there's potential that they might have to move. One of the speakers talked about hatred, and this could potentially be used against them in a hatred way. I disagree. We have so many organizations that have come forward to help them, that want to help them, and want to continuously help them to get where they need to go. Topeka's a very giving city, and it just proved that in this committee when I seen all the people coming forward that wanted to play a part and continually play a part, and they were very happy. I don't know, maybe that's how I took it. You can ask Padilla or you could ask Hiller, but they were happy to hear that we're not going to stop talking about this. We're going to continually get reports and see what needs to be done, that we're not done, because we're a long way from done. When our numbers went down to like 40 and then they popped back up over 100, and the homeless task force which has, I think, 57 entities within them, they're continuously talking about what they can do and how they can help these people, whether it be mentally, physically, socially. They're trying to figure it out. I see nothing but love in that. I don't see any hatred. I don't see any hatred at all. And I tell you what, if somebody does, that Dr. Burton, now he's smiling at me. He's coming forward. That man's an advocate. When he said, you guys can't do it, but I can, and he started pulling people forward, talking to them, walking out there by himself. He is serious. He is very, very serious about the homeless, and I'm grateful for him.
City Manager?
What, Councilman Lesser?
Well, I have Councilmember Padilla next.
Well, he actually had his hand up before you just.
Well, all I have asked, I can put a placeholder in here. Sergeant Clam will have some information regarding numbers for people that might be affected, et cetera. So at some point, if we could get him up to discuss the trails and then others that might be affected, I think that'd be helpful. That doesn't have to be right at the moment,
Okay.
but.
Okay.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The conversation has really been good. I tell you, it was very moving to hear the people come forward who have given their true life stories about what has happened since this has become a topic of conversation, because that conversation has led to a lot of people coming together to problem solve a very serious issue that is shared by many communities in this country. And you can spend all day long looking at best practices, and then the next day looking at best practices, and continue to do that until you find something that you think will fit your community. And I think that's what we're looking at. And I think Chair Ortiz has done a great job of giving everybody that opportunity to custom fit what we're trying to do for this community. And as she has said, this conversation won't stop. Once this is passed, if it is passed, an evaluation of how effective it is going to have to come on a regular basis. Sergeant Clam, the Chief of Police, and others, Vallejo, can give us data that will tell us what they're seeing as a result of our actions. And this has been an act, and I remembered the first year I was on this, we said right up front that we were not about hurting people, we were trying to help people. But you can't help until you know what the problem is, what they need, and start to give those resources to people who need those resources. And you have to organize yourself for that. You can't just be helter-skelter about trying to help people. You have to give them hope. And that's the other thing I heard tonight, that some of these unsheltered people are wondering what's going to happen to me after 17 months. You know, that's hard to live with. I mean, you just can't, you don't know what's going to happen next. And I think we should give them what's going to happen next, but also say as strongly as we can, this is not the end of it. You have an advocate. You have an advocate on the council, and that's Councilwoman Ortiz. She has really taken this seriously, and I think it's important for us to get to a point where we're taking action and not just talking about it. We've put our resources in one place. Let's start using them as effectively as we can. It's good to hear how the housing program has really helped. So this can just be more supportive of that program. It won't go away because this ordinance comes into place. So I would support it as it is now and thank everybody for being patient, but patience wears thin after a while. And for the people who it affects, it's harder on them than us. Thank you.
Councilmember Lester?
I have two questions. Since there is a motion on the floor in regards to add in the trails to it, my questions are in relation to that. Regardless of whether trail language is added to the ordinance, it still would apply to, am I correct, bridges that, you know, for instance, one thing I would have seen when I have ridden my bike through some of the trails is freelance homes that have been created underneath the bridges that are on the trail, which in lieu of the fire makes me, you know, concerned about that and infrastructure. So my first question is, regardless of the trail language, those areas and those bridges that are on the trails would still be subject to the current language, correct?
Councilmember, yes, you are correct. When we wrote this, it wasn't just the Interstate Highway Bridge or the Kansas Avenue Bridge over the river that we were referring to. It would include street bridges as well.
So the bridge, just using as an example, the bridge on Fairlawn where you go underneath the bridge to go up, or gauge, I guess it would be, to go up in there. If a structure was created underneath that, that would apply as well, correct?
Yes.
Okay. The only other second question so I want to finish the information I want on the trail question is, I think the same thing that city manager was saying. I would like to hear the sergeant's take on the trail exposure and stuff.
Okay, city manager.
Sergeant Clam, if you'd please help us out with some information related to the trails individuals and others that might be affected by this.
Sure, thanks for having me up. As far as the actual trails like the Shunga, the land, and trails of that nature, I would say the population on those trails is probably somewhere between 10 and 20 total would be my guess, and I'm talking from, Oakland all the way to 29th and Fairlawn, and then from basically Brown v. Board south to 45th Street. There's not that many in that general area, and to my knowledge, none are on the actual trail itself. Kind of like that's already been discussed, they're off the trail. Some are visible, most are not. But the way I understand the ordinance as written, like some of the individuals that are sleeping underneath the bridges on the Shunga Trail, for example, they would be in violation of the order as it's currently written. So as far as if this was passed tonight, how many would those people be displaced? Not many. I would guess maybe 1 to 3, but not many. And then in total, with individuals living underneath bridges citywide, I would guess 5 to 7 maybe would be displaced. But some new information just to share, they'll be displaced anyway. A lot of those individuals are underneath bridges on I-70 and I-470, and I've been in conversations with KDOT and Highway Patrol, and they are also moving those individuals because they're part of the thoroughfare of the highway. So, and that's completely separate from what's being discussed here. So honestly, those individuals are going to get moved regardless of what happens here tonight. So honestly, if this was passed today, I would guess 5 at the most would be my guess on who would get displaced starting Tuesday, if that's when it takes effect. So.
Okay, any more questions? All right, Councilmember Ortiz, on your amendment, did we have a second? Did you make a motion? A second? So we need to vote on that now? Okay, so yes would be to include the trails, word trails, line 41, 42, and a no would mean do not include trails. Okay. You may vote.
Okay, it looks like we have 5 no. Council members Hiller, Padilla, Jensen, Dobler, and Deputy Mayor.
Okay, so the motion has failed. The amendment has failed. So do we have a, Councilmember Ortiz?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Again, I'd like to thank everybody for being so patient with me. And again, I just can't thank everybody enough. And last but not least, I'd like to thank the city manager, because I told him, can you please put this on the agenda before we get these new people in? And he said, it's already there. So I'd like to thank you. And with that, I'd like to make a motion to pass the ordinance.
Okay, do we have a second? Councilmember Padilla seconds. All those in favor vote yes. All those opposed vote no. What?
Was there going to be any discussion? I know we're ready to go. We had a discussion about a word earlier, and I just wanted to check with City Attorney Robertson about whether we need to take it out or leave it.
Councilmember Hiller, you had asked about the use of the word attended in line 66 on page 3 under the storage of personal property. I think that's how it was intended to be written, but we also discussed, and I discussed with Luther, that just removing that word attended from that line 66 would be okay, and probably preferable, just so nobody else is confused about whether it's to remove attended stored property or to remove unattended stored property. Attended is the correct use of it, but it's either one is prohibited, whether it's attended or not. So just removing the word entirely is totally okay with staff and probably preferable.
So do we have to do a motion to vote?
Make a motion to remove the word attended from line 66.
It would be an amendment.
Okay.
I could, if it's not too late, could offer an amendment to
Haven't voted.
remove the word attended on line 66.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Councilmember Emerson. All those in favor? Anything else? All those in favor, vote yes. Opposed, vote no.
Looks like we have 9 yes.
Okay, so now we vote on the amended ordinance. Any discussion?
Motion to approve the amended ordinance, and hurry up, please.
Second. Anybody else? All those in favor vote yes. All opposed vote no.
Councilmember Lester.
Mr.
Mike.
We have 9 yes.
Great work. All right, will the clerk please read item 3C, an ordinance regarding traffic and pedestrian safety.
C is an update and possible action on the proposed traffic and pedestrian safety ordinance.
Okay, Councilmember Jensen.
Well, I would like to thank Councilwoman Ortiz for doing all the heavy lifting on the bulk majority of the underlying work for both of these. Our committee has a meeting scheduled on Monday the 9th to review the ordinance and make some minor changes based on some of the feedback, again, from Councilwoman Ortiz committee. So with that, I will spare you the long, drawn-out description of what it takes to hold a committee meeting, and we'll be back soon.
Okay, so this was an action item?
It's an action item, it's an update or potential action. But I did want to say, Councilmember Clear, that there's somebody that signed up to speak on this particular
Yes.
issue, I believe.
So that is Russell Burton.
Thank you guys for the opportunity to speak. Russell Burton here. I'm really not prepared to speak on the subject so much, except that it's related to the folks that I work with. I haven't done much research in the area, et cetera, but I can just tell you in ways in which it will impact some people's lives. I mean, I work with folks who count on flying signs in order to be able to have some income, okay? And flying a sign is, call it begging, whatever you choose, but they have a sign out, and that is a source of income for them, and for some folks, it is their only source of income. And especially folks that are south of town, folks that are west of town, they don't have the food network or the mission where they can stay. And so flying signs allows them to get some resources. For one, to stay in a hotel when it's so cold out. They can use that money to get a hotel room south of town fairly cheap. Also, it provides them access to food, which they need. So it's a very important source for folks. And I appreciate that it won't be banned citywide. It'll be banned at certain intersections, but as everybody points out, it'll be the rich intersections that it's banned at, and the poor intersections nobody will care about. And of course, the rich intersections are the most valuable for the folks that are on the streets, because again, that's a source of income. Also, it's a source of charitable giving for your community, your constituents. I mean, if you've ever had an opportunity to give somebody $20 who's on the street, it feels pretty darn good, especially when there's 3 feet of snow on the ground. So it's an opportunity for your constituents to give and to help the community. And I truly believe that there is a common bond in wintertime when folks are driving up and they're seeing somebody sitting on the sidewalk in the snow, and they give them some money in order to be able to at least think that they're putting them in a hotel room for the night, and they probably are, or putting some food in their stomach. That's a real positive experience. That would be lost as well. So again, this will have a devastating impact on the homeless community. And I got the top, I'm going to run right back here real quick. The back here, housing first packet, the last 4 pages. Criminalization of, what is criminalization of homeless? Criminalization of homelessness is when law enforcement threatens or punishes homeless people for doing things in public that every person has to do. This can include activities such as sleeping, resting, sheltering oneself, asking for donations, or simply existing in public place. It also includes arbitrary or unfair enforcing other laws such as jaywalking or disorderly conduct against homeless individuals, and the practice of sweeps or displacing homeless people from outdoor public spaces through harassment, threats, and evictions from living in camps. I mean, that is in essence what you guys have done. You guys have just agreed to criminalize homelessness. Now, I appreciate it's marginal criminalization, but it's still a $500 fine and 30 days in jail if you can't follow the ordinance. The anti-panhandling ordinance that you guys are considering now, that also will put you guys in the category of criminalizing homelessness. And again, I don't think that's the route that the city wants to go down. It's just not a smart, effective way of your resources. It's not a smart way to spend your money. It's going to cost you more money than you'll be saving. You can save all sorts of money by putting these folks in houses and helping them find jobs, and not by chasing them around the street in the middle of the wintertime. And I would like to say that I wish that you guys had thought about delaying that ordinance until it was warmer. I really appreciate Councilmember Jensen, your advocacy there. Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate your time again.
Thank you, Doctor. And I do want to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, this isn't about panhandling or any of that. This is about safety. Am I wrong? I mean, this is about pedestrian and traffic safety, so it's really not about that. So go ahead.
And I really want to encourage you to come to our meeting on the 9th and talk to us about it, because it's not about banning panhandling. We just want folks to do it in safer intersections.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
When is the meeting?
It is the 9th. 2:30, and it's at the Holiday Building.
Okay, and I'll try to.
Yes.
I'll try to bring some folks that panhandle and
appreciate that. Yes, yeah. But it's a very important conversation, and you're right. I mean, that is some folks' only form of income, and so the last thing we want to do is completely take it away. But in some intersections, it's just not safe for motorists. It's not safe for the folks who are panhandling or flagging. Is that what the term used? Or
flying sign.
Flying sign. Excuse me. This is trying to balance that. That's our goal. So I would appreciate your input.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. Okay, will the clerk please read item 4A, a discussion on the AMR franchise agreement? What?
Councilmember Claire, I thought perhaps maybe a motion just to accept the committee's report would be in hand, but I believe Councilmember Hiller had her hand up. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Does somebody want to accept Councilmember Jensen?
Accept the committee report.
Who said second? Councilmember Cohen seconds. And Councilman Fuller.
If it would be too late to ask, I had a question to ask, and that is, this is a substantially changed ordinance from what was proposed before, and I wondered if it should be described to the public now, so people understand what we're looking at now.
Well, we need to review it in committee first.
Okay, and the related question then was, if I read through it not knowing what we were going to do, and I have some questions or comments, so you want those, I don't know that I can come to the committee meeting, you want.
Just give me a call and let's talk about it.
You'd
I'll
rather-
make sure to bring those up,
Okay,
if that works for you.
can make time?
Excellent.
Okay, so do we vote now on that we accept the?
Yes.
Okay, so all those in favor of accepting the report? Vote yes, opposed, vote no.
We have 9 yes.
And I'm voting yes, the acceptance has been approved. Okay, now will the clerk please read item 4A, a discussion on the AMR franchise agreement.
A is discussion regarding non-exclusive franchise for American Medical Response.
And this is a non-action item, so Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Tonight, Chief Duke will explain the changes that have been made in this year's franchise agreement with AMR. Chief?
Deputy Mayor, fellow council people. This is an agreement that the city has with AMR. We went with a one-year agreement this year. This is because we want to sit down during this year to negotiate some other items on it. The fees are not going to be raised this year, but there is an added cost for us when they have a non-emergency bariatric patient being moved in a facility or from their home to a doctor's appointment, whatever. They will be giving us, they will pay a fee for our physical assistance to load that bariatric patient into their ambulance. And like I say, the rest of this year up until July, we will negotiate this contract for a more 2 to 3 year one. This is to also help us include when we move towards ALS and what we are going to be doing to benefit the citizens and also AMR and ourselves.
Okay, any questions? Councilmember Ortiz.
Thank you. Chief, I really don't understand. So we're going to sign an agreement with them, so they show up at the scene, and then our guys load them on the gurney? Is that what you're saying? I mean.
They ask for assistance from the fire department on non-emergency transfers or transports.
A non-emergency?
Non-emergency. If it's a 911 call, there won't be that fee. It's an emergency. But if they have a scheduled appointment and the facility that they're in, whether it be a nursing home or going from home to a doctor's office, they will ask for our assistance in loading the patient from their home to the ambulance.
And that's not going to take away from our coverage or anything like that?
We do it right now. We do it, but with no cost. There's no financial benefit to us, but neither will be. But like I say, between now and July, we will be negotiating a multi-year contract for this. And John Antrim from AMR, he's here. He's a regional manager. And Nelson Castile, he's the ambulance advisory board director for Shawnee County. And like I said, we had an amicable discussion on this, how we're going to move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Emerson?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Chief, a question. One thing in here, it says on line 33 that AMR is currently working toward implementing a community paramedicine program service. Can you tell me what that is?
Well, it's basically, where they will go out, they will meet with patients that are scheduled or have been seen at the hospital, get sent home. meet with them, make sure they're taking their medication and everything, so that they're not using the 911 system. So we're available for emergency calls, and they are available for emergency calls.
Okay, it says in here specifically, this franchise does not permit AMR to provide the new paramedicine program without further approval by the city. Is there some reason we wouldn't want them to be doing that anyway? I mean,
We would be in partnership with them doing this. It may be a joint endeavor where fire and AMR personnel may be working together. It's all dependent on what we decide to do with this program, if it's beneficial to the community.
Would this prohibit them from doing it?
They would have to negotiate with us. We would work with them in starting a paramedicine program if so desired by the city and AMR. It's been in there for the last few years, and nothing has moved forward on that yet.
Okay.
But it's in there.
Okay, I'm just thinking if they want to do something of their own volition that saves money, I don't know why we would not want to let them do that.
It's just us working in partnership with them in putting this program together.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Lesser.
The only question I had, Chief, I assume when we talk about the bariatric patients, we're talking about non-ambulatory patients because of their weight? I mean, is that basically what we're talking about?
That is correct.
So the premise is us helping them helps to lessen the opportunity that there would be a medical emergency, I assume.
That is one thing, but the reason we asked for the fee was the fact that we were their manpower to deliver a patient.
Correct.
It wasn't an emergency transport or anything. It was just a necessary transport to go to an appointment or for a physical.
Whatever. Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Councilmember Hiller?
Well, and maybe I need to ask you outside the meeting, but it sounds like you're negotiating in some new territory now because we're beginning to develop ALS at the fire department.
That is correct.
So is the issue that it duplicates something that they are already doing or that they want to do?
No, we just had initial conversations about resupplying anything that is used on an ALS call, the expense of that, who's going to, supply us. And it's just the fact that they need a time to set their annual budget together. We only been working on this for about a month and a half or so, and they didn't have time to go back to their home office to discuss any increases in budget for next year because they've already set their 2020 budget.
I guess I feel like we're moving into new territory and that there's somehow this big conversation out there that I don't even know what it is, and so.
It's not a big conversation out there. It's just we're starting a pilot program. We have asked them for assistance in this in many ways, and they've asked us. So, like I say, this is not uncommon, moving forward like this.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, then, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Will the clerk please read item 4B, a discussion regarding city's 2020 legislative priorities for 2020.
B is discussion regarding the legislative priorities identified by the governing body to be addressed or monitored during the 2020 legislative session.
Mr. City Manager.
As is stated, we're about to enter into another Kansas legislative session. We've prepared a list of our priorities and the list of some of the priorities of our partners, such as the Kansas League of Municipalities. And Whitney Dameron, please come forward, and Whitney will roll through a description of some of the priorities that we've determined for us, seeking your approval of these priorities at a later date.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor, members of the council, City Manager Trout, members of the city staff. Appreciate the opportunity to visit with you about the 2020 legislative session. I believe you have a document that I prepared in working with City Manager and Deputy City Manager on legislative priorities that some may be familiar to members of the council of issues we've looked at before, and some are some new issues that probably will come up in the 2020 legislative session. At the top of the list, you'll see the item related to the Polk Quincy Viaduct project. That has been something the city of Topeka has been interested in for a very long time. The city has put together a working group that's working with Topeka Chamber and other transportation professionals. We've had meetings with KDOT and among ourselves and in advance of a 2020 transportation program that the governor and KDOT plan to put forth. The city, I know, has also participated in the consults that have been held throughout the state. They've had 2 of them in Topeka as well, in effort to try to put together a plan to allow that project to move forward at some point in time after hopefully a new transportation program is adopted by the state next year. For a little bit of history, the state has approved transportation plans the last 30 years in 10-year blocks. We had one in 89, 99, and then 2010. The 2010 plan is about to conclude. However, there were a number of projects in that plan that were not completed. The T-Works program, due to lack of funding was diverted away from KDOT and put into other programs, state general fund and the like. Some $2 billion was diverted out of the T-Works program over the course of its 10-year run. KDOT has not finalized a plan that they want to bring forth next year, but based upon their discussions, rather than looking at a 10-year plan per se of setting all your projects up front and then you have kind of a 10-year plan of workload, they would look at kind of a 2-year lead time, continue to do local consults around the state, and as priorities of the state of Kansas evolve, communities would be able to bring projects forth that, historically, you may have tried to bring that project forth in the 89, 99, or 2010 plan, and if you were told no, you really didn't have another chance for another 10 years. The way KDOT is looking at it next year is this is kind of a continuing process of evaluating what the priorities of the state of Kansas are and how can those projects be reviewed and vetted, put through planning, and then ultimately put up for design and construction. You are going to see some emphasis coming from KDOT on local participation. They made some announcements, here in about the last 45 days about a number of smaller projects that they have approved around the state, about $90 million worth of projects. About $40 million of that was local participation. I know in discussing with the city manager and the deputy city manager, you look at a project as big as Polk Quincy, that's going to require local participation as well to be able to bridge that funding gap. But that's something to be looked at for the council, I'm sure, down the road as the city works with KDOT on what those requirements might look like and what the city can do to elevate that project to something that becomes a reality. Protection, going down the list of information I've provided to you, protection of local government streams of revenue. We've had those discussions before as far as city, county, state revenue sharing programs. The governor, towards the end of the session this year, appointed a special tax council to review tax policy for the state of Kansas. She, as you may recall, vetoed 2 major tax bills during the legislative session and said the state should get its financial house in order before we go about passing new major comprehensive tax policy, meaning tax reduction. That council has met a number of times in the fall. They have recommendations are pushing forward to the 2020 legislative session, or to the governor, that she will make recommendations. Included in that is funding of local ad valorem tax reduction fund that essentially has been in a suspended animation, so to speak, for probably the last 15 years, as the state has not shared those sales tax revenues back with cities and counties. That recommendation goes to the governor. She crafts the budget, so we may see something in the governor's budget next year to at least fund up some of LAVTR that has been essentially suspended each and every year. So that would be positive for cities and counties. Also, another item that was discussed in the recommendations is a suspension of the tax lid for transportation projects, and that could become something that would be helpful to cities and counties for major transportation project. That issue was around in the 2019 session. It was not part of the package that was passed in 2019 or 2018, but something that is likely to be revisited again next year. I know I've had discussions with the city manager's office about legislation last session to give cities clarify that they have control over the placement of political signs. That's a challenging issue for a number of cities. Becomes kind of a free-for-all in more jurisdictions than others, but it continues to be an issue of concern to the city of Topeka. There was a bill that came out of committee last session, did not run on the floor. That bill's still alive. I visited with the League of Kansas Municipalities about that issue. They had the lead on it in 2019 about revisiting that, either request of leadership to move that bill back to the local government committee or seek introduction of a new bill. Collection of sales tax on internet sales, that issue came up as well in the governor's tax council. There's a fight going on right now between the legislature and the governor about collection or the assessment of the sales tax on internet transactions. Kansas Department of Revenue's position is if you make a sale in Kansas, you shall collect and remit sales tax. There is no exemption for an internet transaction ever. However, in light of recent Supreme Court decisions, that became more clear, at least from a legal standpoint, and the governor's office moved forward with a policy implementation effective October 1 of this year to require anyone who's selling anything subject to a sales tax in Kansas to collect and remit. Legislative leaders pushed back on that, said that was unilateral action by the governor's office that she did not have authority to take, asked for an attorney general opinion. The attorney general came back and said, yes, that was unilateral power exercised by the Department of Revenue, and they did not have the authority to do that. The governor's office has ignored that and said, yes, we do. So that issue will come up in the next legislative session. The legislature did address that piece in their tax package that was vetoed a couple of times, and that would have required the collection and remittance of sales tax on internet transactions. But what other states have done and what Kansas was looking to do is to provide some kind of a safe harbor to small tax generators. So if you had a limited number of transactions or limited number of gross sales, say $100,000 or less, you may not be required if you're an out-of-state seller to collect and remit. Part of the tax council's recommendation today was that tax collectors such as an Amazon has non-Amazon businesses that sell through Amazon, they would become a collector if there was state law, and then they would remit to the state and then distribute it back to local units of government. So that is something that we'll be taking a look at next session as well. Could see legislation on property tax assessment. It really hasn't come to City of Topeka or Shawnee County yet, but we've seen it in Johnson County where you've had some rather dramatic increases in property tax assessments on large pieces of real estate. It's called the dark store theory. I know a lot of people don't like that term, but it's, for example, a Walmart that has gone out of business. Should that be valued the same as a Walmart that is in business? And Johnson County saw some dramatic increases in valuations of those kinds of facilities. The taxpayers objected to that at the county level and brought it to the Board of Tax Appeals, and it's now on its way to the Supreme Court. Their position has been, we pay tax on the value of a building, and we should not pay additional tax or an assessment because it's an ongoing concern in generating revenue. As a Walmart, we pay income tax on those pieces of that transaction. So probably getting out on a limb, I think the property taxpayers win that case. Ultimately, I think, based upon Kansas law, I think people want to see that changed in the legislative process. That will be difficult to do. But I also note that there are some appointments on the Board of Tax Appeals that come up next year as well, and like changing judges, that could change policy. So we'll see where that goes. Telecommunications infrastructure, I mentioned that a couple of years ago, the telecoms came in and had legislation to allow them to require cities and counties to make available public infrastructure for placement of small cell technology. And they wanted a streamlined process to be able to come in and essentially maybe put in internet capabilities, broadband capabilities inside a city corridor. Some cities have had some challenges with the way that's been implemented. I don't know that that's been an issue for the city of Topeka. But we're hearing that the cable telecommunications industry may want similar treatment, so they may bring a bill, so that issue may come back up as far as cities taking a look at that and what they're asking for. League of Kansas Municipalities typically takes a lead on that, and other cities that are interested come to the table as well. Something else that's been brought up just recently that I just make mention to it, there apparently some interest in revisiting the common consumption area issue for being able to carry open containers of alcohol in certain areas, whether it's behind kind of a controlled access point or not. I don't think the legislature wants to get back into that issue. I think there are some enforcement issues there as well, but if it does come up, I certainly will be in communication with the city manager's office about what that looks like and what the city's position might be on that. In the document I provided to you today, I kind of walked through a number of the major issues that we're likely to see considered during the next legislative session. May or may not be municipal issues, so to speak. But they will take up considerable time in the legislative process. Constitutional amendment on abortion, we've got banks versus credit unions, electric rates, foster care, capers, Medicaid expansion, that is considered the governor's #1 priority next year, medical marijuana, non-economic damages cap, pain and suffering, does that affect med-mal cases or all tort litigation, prison sentencing reform, sports wagering, Supreme Court nomination process, and some of the other things we've previously mentioned, internet sales, transportation. I've also listed the leading items, the action items from the League of Kansas Municipalities and the Kansas Association of Counties. The city has historically supported the League's agenda if it's consistent with what the priorities of the city are. When they take those kinds of issues into the legislative process, we communicate with the city manager's office. Here's a bill, it's a major issue for the League. The League asks us, lobbyists, municipal lobbyists, can you get support from your city for this? And then a decision is made, do we want to weigh in on that? Do we want to testify, provide testimony, communicate with the delegation, and so forth. So I've included that in my report as well. And then finally, in December, every year, the Shawnee County delegation meets in the State House. They invite interest groups to come in and tell them, what is your legislative agenda for next year? What are your concerns? That is happening tomorrow. There's kind of a calendar of those who are looking to appear, starting at 9 a.m. and continuing on through early afternoon. There were a couple of more names added late, but the usual suspects are in there: City of Topeka, District Court, judges, school districts, YWCA and the Topeka Chamber and others. And so they will get their 15 minutes of allotted time and talk about what their priorities are. I will take comments from this meeting today and direction from city manager's office and make a presentation to them tomorrow. I believe Deputy City Manager Gerber is going to be there, but we will respond to questions and let them know what the direction is at this point in time from the city council. So with that, I'd be happy to stand for questions.
Okay, questions, discussion? Councilmember Herwood?
A clarification, if you could. The issue that you raised about the values of buildings that's in court right now, where do you think we're going with this?
Well, I think those cases, before the legislature that probably wants to take action on that, I think you're going to have to see decisions of some finality out of the state Supreme Court. And so then people will know one way or the other, who wins that case, whether, quite frankly, the county appraiser of Johnson County wins or the taxpayer wins. And I think right now it's a moving target until you get some kind of a decision out of the court. So, and that may not happen during the 2020 legislative session, or it may not happen in a timely manner.
Well, something to consider, and Sasha Hahn is still here, and city manager, is there's been a lot of concern here about how to get people to move vacant properties. And so I don't know where this would fit in with testimony, but if you drop the value of the building because it's empty and don't value it as it would even in and of itself, much less what it would be fully actualized, then in a way that makes it kind of a good deal for somebody to have a building vacated and leave it vacated. Just kind of opposite where we've been trying to go with it.
I mean, you've seen big box retailers that when they decide a location is not working out for them, they're not shy about just closing it and walking away, or moving 3 blocks away and putting in a new building. And so that, we've seen some of that in Johnson County in particular, and we've seen some dramatic increases in tax valuations. Quite frankly, at the meetings that I've attended by the League of Kansas Municipalities, they have said, we can't go into the legislative process and justify the way some of these properties have been treated in Johnson County. That is up to you, Johnson County, to go make that argument, because we just will not go in and defend buildings that have been increased in value over a course of 3 years from, say, $15 million to $50 million. There are a number of stark examples like that they provided to us. So right now, it seems to be a Johnson County issue, but I know Shawnee County is concerned, Sedgwick County is concerned about what ramifications that could have, depending upon which way the litigation goes.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Councilman Dobler?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mr. Dameron, as always, a great job. I think the priorities are on target, and I know you've worked with the city manager, deputy city manager on this. Obviously, the Pope Quincy is a high priority for this community, but I like the focus on revenue via sales tax and internet sales tax and all of those type of issues. I don't really see anything to add at this point. I think
No.
we're good to go. Thank you.
Councilmember Jensen?
Thank you, Your Honor. You and I have talked about property rights several times. Is that just pretty much dead at this point at the state level?
Well, the issue came up late in 2019. A pretty willing chairman on the House Commerce Committee and pushed that bill out, and it is something we'll continue to ask him to take a look at. Our roadblock has been the Senate, but you'd like to think someday that there would be an opportunity to address some of those kinds of issues.
Well, I appreciate you following that. That's an important issue for us. I know it's not on the agenda for next year, but it looks like this is a pretty full agenda with important things anyway, so.
There was a Kansas City Star article a couple of days ago that was similar, but it was Kansas City, Missouri. But it talked about a property owner who has a house, several homes that are in significant need of repair, and it's kind of a breeding ground for wildlife
Yep.
and the challenges that the city and the neighbors have in addressing that. And as we've talked before and tried to make the case to the legislature, there's a balance of property rights, and the neighbors should have rights as well, at least on par with the property owner.
And that's exactly our challenge here as well.
Yes.
Thank you for your help.
Thank you. Oh, Councilmember Ortiz.
Thank you. Whitney, when we talk about mental health, does that include our youth?
Yes, I mean, I believe it would. I think the governor's office has expressed their support for increased funding for mental health. I think it would include certainly any and all.
I just want to make sure that we make that clear, that it does include our youth, not just for the adults, you know, because I'm seeing that on the rise with foster care as well. They both work hand in hand. And then I just, you know, I've been up here a long time, you know that. And we've talked about the Polk Quincy Viaduct forever, and we're still talking about it. So how much longer, I mean, does it continue to look like we're just gonna keep talking about it and talking about it? I know we've got all kind of professionals that are meeting, but it just seems like every year we're talking about it and talking about it and talking about it.
I think, well, there are other people on the council. I know Councilman Dobler would have some experience with this, well, city manager's office. I think the challenge that we have had is that project did not elevate in the T-Works discussion to a level that it was put in place to something to be done. And it does have a significant price tag, anywhere from
Right.
$180 million to $250 million or more. And that is a big bite, even, you know, bonding
Right.
something that big. The point I want to make tomorrow, that we want to make, the city has talked about, is to our Shawnee County delegation, is the city really hasn't seen that major kind of a project that other communities have seen in 89, 99, and 2010. And it's time for the city of Topeka to see a project like this that gets put into place and is constructed. And we're going to ask the Shawnee County delegation to weigh in with KDOT and the governor's office. We have a governor who understands that area very well from where she lived in the Potwin area and downtown and so forth. And so, you know, we're hopeful that the people will take a look at that and give favorable consideration. I know in my conversations with senior people at KDOT, they're enthusiastic about the project. We've talked with them about what the city is looking at as far as its participation in helping close the financial gap. They are interested in that and have positive comments for that. They have done the initial planning, I believe, for the project. So from their standpoint, KDOT is ready for that kind of a project to come up and be put into place and be constructed. There are a handful of major projects I know that people want to look at in a transportation plan next year, and the legislature is not the one that selects those plans. It is KDOT. Legislature has to pay for it, has to not take money out of KDOT. 69 Highway in Johnson County, Wyandotte County has a handful of projects, South Lawrence Trafficway, and then Wichita. But Polk Quincy in Topeka is right in that same group of projects that I think people have looked at and said, it's time to move this project forward. So I'm hopeful we can get it into queue.
Deputy City Manager Gruber, I think he has
Well, I'm not done.
some information.
If I may continue. Well, good luck. I wish you well, because I'm tired of hearing about it, and I know we need it. I just know year after year and time after time, this is brought up to us all the time. And one more thing, have we talked about, has there been any talk about the bus transportation, like the funding there, that we could get more? You know, I know it's all split up, this person gets this, but I was always told we do a very good job, even better than Wichita, and we don't get as much as they do.
I believe it's done through a formula.
Right.
Topeka Metropolitan Transit Authority would be better positioned to answer exactly how that is divided up. I know that the commitment to transit remains at KDOT, and I think you will not see a reduction in funding. And I think there's opportunity.
I would like to see
funding in
more.
general.
I would like to see more funding in Topeka and also with our train system, you know, but I'm just throwing that out there.
Understood.
Thank you, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time tonight.
This is our usual take a break time, but city manager, I want to make sure if that's okay with, that's going to work with Brendan. 10 minutes?
Yep.
Okay.
Please.
So we will adjourn for 10 minutes for a break. Thank you.
Thank you.
But the state captive.
Sure you would have to.